Well, welcome to Real Love Guitars. We are working, it's working, the new camera. Same as before, only newer. So what we've got here is we got an old acoustic guitar, Japanese made but no name on it. And it's a lovely old thing that Simon's had for years, and it's got a great deal of sentimental value. However, it looks like it had some nylon strings attached to it. Oh, weird. Anyway, so yeah, it's a lovely old thing, and the artwork was done by a friend, and it means a lot to Simon. Hence, he's kept it all these years, and he brought it along to see whether, first of all, what we could do to make it look better, and you know, in possibly even play better if that's even doable. Now, the thing about this guitar, we had a quick look at it while he was here, and really we had to end up considering whether one of two outcomes for this guitar. One is that it could see whether it could be made to play, or if not, could we make it at least look less forlorn so that it would kind of sit on the wall and look cool and remain cool looking for, you know, sentimental wall hanging. And having had a close look at this thing, I think we had to be brutally honest with ourselves and concede that it couldn't really play again. And the reason for that is that it could play again, but it appears to require way too much work, which would be economically unviable. Anyway, so I mean, obviously we're missing tuners. That's a cheap thing in a sense. You could get a set to replace those missing ones. Now, I might even be able to rebuild those broken ones from some bits if it's not going to be a using guitar, but just a wall hanging. But the real issue about this guitar is that somebody has had to glue on the neck heel in the past, and they've done a fairly good job with resin, and they've also glued together this joint here, so it's come apart in at least two different ways, and there's a lot of glue and a sort of pooling of lacquer. Either it's a pooling of lacquer or it's glue and lacquer, which is sort of dripped here. So it's kind of testament to the fact that it's already come apart and somebody's done a lot hard work to put it together. Now, the result of that is it's left a bulge here. This slopes backwards, this is high, then it scoops out to the rest, and to make it play, somebody's hammered the fret leveling on here, and you can see a lot of scratching where in fact even the fingerboard's probably been reduced to make it even play. So somebody's tried to probably file away the fingerboard and take down the frets, so there was some chance of it playing. Now, they've made it kind of play. Then, having looked a bit further, we noticed that the bridge is riding up off the deck, and there's a substantial bellying on this top as well. So, all told, it's got a lot of problems, and you can see the sort of extent of the bellying, which has caused the bridge to lift off. Now, you know, the problem, as I said to Simon, is this. You know, I get that, first of all, it's not really about the economics because it's sentimental value, but it has to also be about, you know, what can we know about this guitar? Well, one thing I know is the humidity and the bellying is a problem here. So it's bellying, and the bridge is going to come off at some point, and it will come off when we load it too much with a set of strings. So even if we were to cure that, which means probably a long period of dehumidification or intensive dehumidification, we'd have to remove the saddle, replace it, clamp it down, but we'd have to wait till the bridge top, the guitar top was flat, because we don't want to just put it back down on a curved top, because that wouldn't stick and you'd end up with the same problem here. So that's a major operation. I don't know how strong this neck is now with this repair that's been done, and we'd have to defret it in order to flatten it out properly, in order to then refret it and make it play again. So we're looking at, even if we didn't do any more neck work, more neck resetting, we'd have to do a full refret, remove the bridge, dehumidify, flatten it, get it flat, then reattach the bridge, replace the tuners, and then, only then, would we be in a position to load the guitar with strings, and we might find this neck joint comes apart again. In that case, all of that is already cost what it's cost, and then we have to add getting somebody else, I would say, to do a neck reset to get the angles correct, because it's not my field and it's a hugely intensive operation from what I've seen. So it, you know, for a friend you might do this as a labour of love forever and ever, but commercially speaking it would be foolish to go at it, because you wouldn't be able to tell until you you know, without loading it up and trying to play it, you wouldn't really know how stable this was or what else was going to happen to this neck. And so it could become an open-ended thing for you know, anyone who's a friend and a customer. So you know, you could become a money pit, and actually the worry I have in this kind of thing is that both parties end up feeling terrible, because it takes way more work than you feel you can end up charging somebody who you like, and you don't want to hit with a massive bill. Now that's even if I could do the neck reset, which is not my, as I say, not my field, but I can see that it's, if we assumed that this joint was well repaired and the angles were decent enough overall, which it doesn't seem to be too bad, but we are left with this debilitating hump here, and that really does suggest it needs, there's no point spending tons of time. I mean, we could put strings on, and there's no harm in putting strings on and seeing if it plays, and then if it plays, then we're left with, okay, well this bridge is going to come off, but maybe Simon wants to play this until the bridge comes off. So there's a kind of a few stages, and then if it comes off, well, what do you do? Well, you could try and you know, go do the next bit if you wanted to. The thing about the way these bridges come off is that they come off so stiffly that it's not like they come off and you can just press them back down and everything's cool. If I take the strings off now, off here, the bridge won't just tilt back down. It's now sort of warped into that upwards position, and so it doesn't even want to go flat, really. I mean, it can go a little bit, but it's kind of happy in that position now because it's kind of gone there so slowly. You know, so the way I think about this is the things that mattered to Simon was, could we get it so that it just looks finished and it doesn't look sorry, because he likes it as an object. So my primary concern on this is, well, I've ordered a set of pegs just to fill up the holes. I've got an old set of donated acoustic strings which are perfectly good for this. Simon's keen to, I said that we can rebuild it, or we can make a scratch plate for this, no problem, to go around this, so it looks a bit more loved and worked on. I can either buy some cheap tuners to go in here, or I can try and rebuild a couple of missing bits, which shouldn't be too big a deal. I'm going to see if I can just spray over and preserve this, but I need to know what this what material or what inks are used here before I do that, because Simon wants to stop that rubbing off. He wants to preserve it, even if it's just a wall object. But if I can find a way to preserve this, and we can load up with some strings, we can see what happens to the neck, and we can decide whether it's worth just having it play for a while and then one day this comes off. It's interestingly enough, as it stands right now with only 2 strings on it, this isn't so high up that the action is unplayable here. So I'm wondering if whatever's happened here has possibly gone some way towards resetting the angles, and I don't think this is a full neck reset, but it could be for all I know. So somebody may have already accommodated for this rising action. I mean, truth to tell, there's quite a bit of room we can take off, providing this hump here is not going to get in the way, because there's no more fret metal here. So we've got a bit of low cost play which won't affect how it looks as a finished wall object, and we might as well give it a go. But like I say, I'm not going to try and clamp this down because it becomes a massive, there's going to be a huge problem. Now you could get some resin in there to fill that out, and it would provide it a bit more grip as this continues perhaps to belly. It may have stabilized for all I know. You know, we could add some resin in there, which again won't hurt the thing, because if it has to come off anyway, eventually it has to come off, and even if you wanted to redo it, you'd sand the pieces down and stuff. So it might be able to arrest the thing popping off later on. And if we take a bit of action down on this, then who knows, we might even find that, providing the neck doesn't fold up on us, we might, and this bridge don't pop off, we might even find something that Simon can sit down and noodle with on the sofa. And you know, why not? Because who wants a guitar that doesn't do anything? So it's a kind of an interesting one, and I don't want to end up it costing him too much and taking tons of time. So thinking of it the sensible way around, we're going to trace around this, make a template for a scratch plate when it comes in. I've ordered it, just a blank piece of scratch plate. And then I'm going to have to find a little patch of this and discover what kind of ink this is and whether it's water soluble or whether it's solvent based. Now if it's solvent based, the last thing I think I want to do is spray nitro on it, which, although it's a nice idea, it would cover over the guitar and kind of keep it safe. I suspect if it's solvent based, you know, like marker pen type of ink, then we have a risk that the nitro will just bleed it all the way across. Conversely, if it's water based, we don't want to put water based lacquer on it, so I'm wondering whether an acrylic or something would work best. The other question is whether we try and do any cleaning to this before spraying it, and I have a feeling, I mean, mainly for the point of view of ensuring that there's a good stick of any finish, because if this is kind of covered in a patina of grease or whatever, then it may find that it just doesn't adhere, the finish doesn't adhere, and we could end up with a gloopy mess. So right now I don't know what this is made of, or what this is done with, so I'm going to have to do a bit of destructive testing, and there's no real way other than to pick it's
your burglary alarm going
off.
off.
Yes, pick an area that's as inconspicuous as possible, and try and just see if it reacts to water or a solvent and see what happens, but there's no real way around it, and then go from there, and then see if we can, thank you dear, see if we can make it play in any shape or form with what we've got, because it's not economical to worry about if the neck bends or breaks off, and it's certainly, we're not going to refret it, and I don't think we're going to pull this off, but we might just set up a little dam and feed some liquid resin into it just so we hold it in place, and if it gets no worse, then, you know, it's better than a poke in the eye. And I might try and rebuild those tuners.
That's playing well.
Now what worries me slightly is that there are the remains. Oh yeah, that's a good sound. There are the remains down here. Oh, this is the hanger. Okay, this has been wall hung. I was going to say there are remains of nylon strings, and if it had been strung with nylon strings, that would kind of probably be the first admission that the neck can't handle steel strings. But that's only for the purpose of hanging. So this baby hasn't played for a while, as you can probably tell. But let's see if we can get something back. But it all comes back to the first test has to be whether it's the neck and the bridge is going to collapse when I put it under load. But I think before we do that, let's do the test on the top, put some lacquer under the resin under the bridge, you know, is the best we can do to support it. I'll see you in a minute. Let's carry on. I was just having to respond to stepmom about going over to do some more DIY. Right. Okay, so my thought is, first of all, I'm going to use a little bit on the edge here where the paint has, or the ink or whatever it is, has come across over onto the binding, because actually most of it doesn't reach the binding, and if I lose a bit there, it actually looks better because it doesn't really ought to be on the binding. So let's get a plastic cup for a little bit of water, which I keep in my water bowl. Let's turn that off for a minute. I think once we've done this look at the top, I think an early thing to consider then is loading the neck, even if it costs us a bit in strings, because I think we need to know whether this thing can hold the... So I think I'm going to do the tests on here, decide what's doable, maybe do a quick spray, mask some things off, get this sprayed off, and then, but before that I'll do the resin under there, and then we can load it with some strings and we can see if it's just going to hold out at all or not at all. So the first little bit, I don't really have any more technologies to do this with, but I'm going to, I've got some brushes, but even they're a bit sort of wimpy. So if I were to get a bit of water on here and just try on the edge of this thing and see if anything soaks up and moves around, and then we'll try and rub it off if possible. Doesn't appear to be coming away. It might already be sprayed over with a light something or other. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of a hard scrub. And actually there's nothing coming off there. So that's not responding to water, which means it could already be lacquered over. Now, the next question, which I don't know the answer to, is it going to react to another kind of finish and make a mess? I have got an acrylic finish, which I don't really know. Again, I don't know what the chemical composition of it is in order to work on to something like this. But judging by the continuity of this feel, I feel like this has been already sprayed over with a satin finish. And it might be a polyester, a polyurethane, which I think I've got a spray poly somewhere, polyurethane varnish, or it may be, if this was water-based, it may be nitrocellulose, which would be, again, fairly easy to do. There are some areas where it appears to have been replaced a little, and I don't know whether that looks like it's done with a felt tip pen, and again, that might react badly to what you would call it, solvent stuff. There's a load of glue residue here from where the scratch plate, and that's not a problem, we'll just go over the top of that. Now, having said that, presumably whatever this has been finished with underneath the scratch plate probably bears some relation to this. And actually I have a feeling that, and in fact I'm fairly certain, that this original glue, this guitar has been sprayed over since this scratch plate came off. So this glue underneath here is covered in a layer of the same material that this guitar has been sprayed with. So I think somebody's already done the can we preserve it spray finish. Now the only thing I don't know is what the material is. I suppose we've got a bit of leeway to see if whatever takes it off under there, but I don't really have any other way of getting it off other than some cellulose thinners. If it softens this up underneath here, then we could suggest that it's nitro. If it doesn't, then it's probably poly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little dab under here. This is just trial and error because I don't know any of the technicalities of this. I'm going to have a little dab under this area here with naphtha. Now if this isn't covered by something, it will lift off that grease, the sticky stuff, which is the residue that's left behind by the tape. Now that hasn't lifted it at all, and it hasn't softened whatever the substance is over the top of there, which is good. Now the next test I'm going to do on this piece of stuff, and I'll do it over the top of a piece of glue, is the cellulose thinners. And the issue here would be, this is my logicness, if this now softens and gets through to the glue layer, then what I'll be confident that I will have got through a layer of nitrocellulose and got down to the sticky glue. And I think, my dear friends, that's almost exactly what's happening here. I think, yep, we're through to the paper and the glue. All right, so just wash that and rub that back so it doesn't go any further. Yeah, so now I'm through the nitro. So this is a satin nitro. I conclude this has been sprayed with a satin nitro to preserve the finish. Shite. To preserve the artwork, and it's been sprayed on top of what I suspect is a water-based brushed on ink, apart from one little spot here which has been filled or refinished, but I don't know what will happen to that under the application of nitro cellulose, whether that will run a little bit. And in fact it might even have done so, because I can see where it's gone, there's a bit of blurring and spreading. So that, ladies and gentlemen, there concludeth my entire scientific research, just by a sort of process of a little bit of trial and error. having said that, I would also conclude that I don't need to spray it. So what Simon didn't know was whether this is sealed in or whether it's going to come off. And a bit came off historically, but I would say, judging by my little exploration under here, and that's now softened this, you see, and I can actually get a bit of this up. But I would say this has already been sprayed and it's not actually going to go anywhere. So I don't think we need to spray it. Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It looks to me, there's one patch here that's got damaged but hasn't gone any further. It's sealed under this layer as well, I would say. And if it isn't, or if it might not be, the only question I've got is, will I be able to remove it with a solvent pen? Trouble is, if it is, see, if this is all water-based, which I think it is, and if this is a kind of repair done in solvent, then spraying this with the same stuff as that will cause that to run. So the best bet for that one is quite literally to repair it with further colouring in, and it will obviously look, I don't want to do it, but get a Sharpie, Simon, and colour that bit in again if you're worried about it looking a bit see-through. But this has been protected and it's not going to rub off with use, unless the finish eventually rubs off. But I can see that it's not even gone shiny because it's not been played, I think, since it's been sprayed. So that's my conclusion. I'm going to not broke, don't fixing it approach to this. Now, technically, if I was to want to put some goo under here, I might want to, I'd probably want to have it under as high a load as possible before I put any resin under there, because otherwise it's just going to lift it up further. And the idea of putting resin under here would purely be to add a little bit of extra grip in the period of time that this guitar may or may not be played. It's not a fix, okay? Please don't think that's how I would fix that, because I wouldn't. I'd want to take it off, but just in a way trying to arrest its further movement for the time being. Let me just look and see how many sets of strings I might have in the freebie acoustic department, electric guitar string. Almost all of these courtesy of another Simon, who has sent me loads of spares and stuff, which are great, and half of them I haven't even thought of trying, but they're mostly electric. I think, oh no, maybe it's, no, they're mostly electric. Well, for the loading part of it, I could put on a set of electric, kind of dummy electric strings, spare cheapies like these. Tigers! Spare E string. Oh, thanks for that. So if I put on some electric strings, just to add some loading, then I can have the bridge as high as it's going to go. And mind you, I can only load 4 strings anyway. Alright, let's remove these. We'll get these off and let's see if we can repair these tuners first and foremost. So like I say, I've got a set of pegs coming, which is relatively inexpensive, so that's not a big deal. I'll hold on to these just for a minute. I don't have I think I just chucked away a mucky old acoustic set. PV phosphoruns, 12s to 53s. Okay. So that's an interesting find. I think that's as protected as it's going to be. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to trace a shape for a homemade scratch plate, which will be in 2-point-something millimeter scratch plate plastic. So I'll get me low tack tape. that. Now what I really want to do is trace as close a shape as I can see that follows the writing, and I may need to modify this a little bit as we go. Once we start cutting it and sanding it. Quite difficult, there's a lot of reflections going on in here. Obviously it's probably better to be a little bit overcut to begin with anyway, so and then we can adjust. Now typically these don't fit exactly onto the I mean this one would have overlapped slightly by the looks of it, so let's start with it overlapping to the first ring. There you go. So that's our start point. I'll just pin it up there, and then when the sheet comes in, we can just make a one and put it on the sandy pillow sander and make it work. Right. So we also, like I said, we've room to lower this. So, but I don't want to lower it into the region where it buzzes out strings. So this needs to be a little bit carefully done when the time comes. However, in the meantime, let's get this broken pile off here. Let's see if we can find a fix for it. Now, a replacement set would probably be 15 quid or something from a Chinese supplier or something like that. In fact, you could probably get them cheaper, but you might have to wait weeks for them to arrive. So I would, you know, for a UK supplier, you'll get a cheap set of tuners like this for tenner, something around that, 10 to 15 pounds. But they are completely bog standard in construction. Now I just threw away a ton of bits that probably would have done the right thing on this, but let's see. I've got my thinner or my pointier snips are in the house, annoyingly. But we'll just pull this off and vacuum it up later. Okay, so this one sort of works enough. And this one, I'm going to stand the guitar up here. So it's kind of reassuring to know. Front door, back in a sec. Claire's gone to get it. Right, let's get some more tuner bits. Let's see if we can cannibalise anything. I mean, better than spending hard cash. So we've got basically the same structure, these things. Providing the pegs are long enough, we should be able to get away with modifying or borrowing from here, which is quite the fun part. You can't see this too well, but we're going to take the little brass wheel, the little screw, and the thingamajig. So we go like that, and we hope the pitch of and that's the only consideration, that the pitch of the thread pitch, whatever it is, of the gear is the same, and actually it doesn't appear to be quite the same. It's also brass. It's not far off. How far has it got to come through? Come on. Am I the right way up? Yes, I'm the right way up. Yeah. Oh, maybe. Oh, maybe. 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 Perfect. Ah. Where did I take that one from? Well, let's take another one. Luger. Typical, I went and picked a completely random one, unlike the others. Nope, nope, nope. Well, it's like that one, isn't it? Is it? No, not even like that one. How many are there? 4. These were nice looking things, but then 4 is no good to anyone. These are lovely old vintage things, but they're no good. But the basic thing will still apply. So let's look for a decent geared part. Gear, there we go. So now this time we need the star screw bit. Okay, and by the same token of universal Chinese manufacturedness, oh ho ho, we are fixed. Now we're only short now with some screws to go back in. I think we'll go for something that isn't a slotted screw. Maybe we'll do that on both sides. But there you go. Recycled, rebuilt. So what are we looking for? We're looking for some technically we need a few, but how many holes have we got here? Plenty.
Don't say I don't nice things.
You treat me, Madame Ambassador. Next pickguard screws, miscellaneous. Was that delivered to our door?
It was.
At the expense of the local businesses that I was talking about on camera just now.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't sell it, do they?
Well, they don't. If you bought 12 rolls of that stuff on your weekly shop, you wouldn't have room for anything else in the cupboard, which is probably quite a good idea.
Yeah. No, I was lamenting Paul down at the hardware store and his struggle to, get customers in when it's sort of easier and greater range of options to go to B&Q type places. But it's a real shame. But what do we need? We need 8 in total, don't we? Sorry.
Yes, I don't know what the answer is. Do
Well,
you remember that shop that we used to go to, the electrical shop that had little drawers, and you used to pull out the drawer and have fuses? It was in the High Street and it was run by 2 brothers.
do I remember one?
Yeah, you came in with me.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's where the
Down the end.
vape shop is.
Down the end, yeah. My God, yeah. That was a weird place.
It was, wasn't it? But it
was proper
very
old.
fashioned,
Yeah,
wasn't
the
it?
kind of place you want to go in and ask for some 4 candles.
Exactly. That's where it came from. Yeah.
Granville sort of thing. I said to Linda we'd go across at 6 o'clock. Yeah. I've repaired the tuners, reconstructed them from nothing, from absolutely nothing.
You're a magician.
Well, I still don't know how well it's going to play. That is really greasy. Now that hasn't been cleaned. Yeah, DNA samples, CSI.
Right, see you later.
Oh, are you going in the house type of thing? You're not going out, are you? All right, I'll see you in a bit. Ew. Ew. Well, that's nice and clean. Reconstituted. Juniors. I've been there before already today. I recognise that feeling. That feeling of ferrules hitting the deck. Now, how deep are these screws, just before we go piling all the way through? 1. We happen to have 8 of the correct length screws for this. Delicious. So they're not going to fall off again in a hurry. ferrules might still fall off. Okay. So that's that. Let's remove this and the other one. And also we can give it a clean behind there. That doesn't want to come out. That does want to come out. Very good. Rusty old screw. Give that a bit of a degreaser. Actually, what I should have done is, while that was off, I should have just given this a bit of a dust down. Now this is also sprayed on the front with artwork preserving satin nitro by the looks of it, so at a guess, and a correct guess, that didn't fall apart either. So we put these on, screw them back in. How come I've got, oh yeah, I did need 4. Very good. Don't drop you. It's always the thing, doing anything hanging over the desk. You drop it, you lose it. Sorry, can I see what I'm doing here? Very well. Rescue the ferrule, the Will Ferrell. Way, just one. Just one ferrule, and that actually sticks in under pressure, which is good. Right, oh, critical bits done. Next bit, let's use up some strings and see what happens to this guitar when you put it under a heavy load. For which I will also need some more spare pegs, which I hope I have some. Acoustic pins white. I have some. Well, I'll just replace these with the ones that are coming, which is fine. It's all much of a muchness. They look a little bit new, but better than, yeah, we'll use that. Ooh, these come in waterproofy, rustproofy, no, not rustproofy containers, just bits of cellophane for the hell of it. Okay, now if I put this on, is that a shimmer? Is that a, that actually looks, it looks like, I don't know if it is, but it looks like a piezo pickup element. I could be wrong, could be very wrong. It could just be a shim of strange plastic. But we'll start with that out, for we do not need him. And we'll assume that it's that way around, with the bass higher, and could be wrong. Now, ideally, if these play okay, what we could do is we could use the tension to pull the bridge up. We can maybe over tension it, get some resin in there, and just leave the strings on, and then see what we've got in terms of a playing guitar. Because if it plays and we can make some alterations and we've reinforced the bridge just a little bit, we've ascertained that the artwork doesn't need any further protection because it's already lacquered under, and we've repaired the tuners, and we've put a pickguard back on it for sheer good looks. And actually we might find ourselves with a tired old playing guitar, which will be kind of sweeter than just having it on the wall for looks, and also for very little extra cost. But it's sort of a matter of kind of accepting what's possible and what isn't, I suppose, and also, you know, where it makes sense to spend a lot of money and where it doesn't. Now, having said all of this, the next thing to happen could be that the entire bridge breaks off as soon as we do this. I have no idea. It's part of the way off, and it inevitably, particularly if that top continues to bulge, which it may or may not do, I can't tell, but you know, the reality is it may well come flying off one day, and the only solution for that is to attempt to redo it completely, take it off and refit it. But you know, that would then be the big money. So from one Simon to another, these strings are being repurposed. Pay it forward, shared, the goodness shared with the world. Yikes, stiff as anything, but they work. Now I think I'm going to do this snipping while I have access to them, and before they get further wound. Further around. Oh boy, I don't know if I might have said on video, but played a terrible gig on Saturday. But by contrast, went out and had a kind of regular jam with some friends. We've been playing together off and on for about a year. And we're actually lining up to play a party at Ian the singer's house. So it's going to just be a fun summer affair. So we're not really a proper band, but we're having fun. Yeah, you know, it's good fun last night, and it was a good antidote to a rubbish gig the other day, which bizarrely we got paid more individually for that gig, that bad gig, than we've been paid for some of the better ones we've done in the past. Anyway, it's put me in thinking mode, really, about whether it's going to work out. There's some fundamental things which I think may not change. But it's a really weird thing that when you play with people, you know, the relationship you have to make a band work is quite complex, and it's actually quite significant. And I think a lot of people, or many people, I think, assume they can do it, when in fact they just don't have the qualities isn't the right word, but they don't have the temperament for the sort of relationship that you have to make it work in a band. And it just doesn't. The one thing is for sure is it doesn't just happen by accident. We're not born with that ability. You have to have a certain approach and sensitivity to the music, and relating to 4 or 5 other people sometimes it is. So it's pretty complicated. One of the things I've learned is that if you do get together with a group of people who aren't able to talk about it, or not willing to kind of discuss it and work on it explicitly, you know, knowing, you know, all of them knowing that those aspects of that musical relationship have to be talked about in the open and looked at under a kind of microscope, then it doesn't work. It just doesn't go past a certain point. And you know, sometimes people are lucky enough to find that, you know, some, you know, classic songwriting or bands of the old, you know, old, in the annals of rock and roll, you know, some of them have just been a kind of magical chemistry that works. And you can either sort of spend your life looking for that perfect partnership, or you have to kind of work on it, is my experience. And you know, maybe Lennon and McCartney didn't have to, but most people do to some degree or other. And if you can't, or the band members aren't in that space where they're able to do it, then you don't get past a certain point, is what I've learned. Right, well, look at that. The old beastie with some strings. Now, here's the fun part. This is where we discover whether it's just going to snap. Ooh. Ooh. See how far this comes up. That's actually not the bridge coming off, I don't think. Blimey, it looks so scary. That's the pegs creaking. Well, that's where it's at. Back end's up a bit, quite a bit. You know, we pull it off? Pull it off? Do we try and pull it off? Do we try and pull it off, or do we just leave it as is? That's quite a, wow, that's quite a step. What I can't really see very well is how little or much is still attached. I don't know how to switch this into airplane mode, this stupid phone. How do I do it? Airplane mode. Is there an obvious button? No, let's just go torch mode. Sorry if this makes bleeping noises while I look. I observe the light. I can't even see. What rubbish. Right. That's crap. That is a useless torch arrangement for this activity. So the theory is I could mix up some resin and let as much as possible ooze into that space with the strings under tension. Then we could slack them off, let it sit back a bit, and then let it bite as much as it possibly can, and we keep it in this sort of position while we do it. It's either going to come off soon or it isn't, so I don't think there's any harm in having a go at this. What I'm going to do is just put a little bit of tape across the various, wow, these parts just behind here, because anything that spills off, I would like it just to get picked up by the masking tape rather than go all over the artwork. It should be alright. So that's about right for that side. And actually slide it down on that masking tape, which is quite good too. So let's get that up there. It's not obviously an ideal way of doing it. You know, you really would want to remove the bridge, but having said that, you don't really want to remove the bridge if the top is still curved or bulging, because you're just going to end up with trying to put a curved thing, sorry, a flat thing back on a curved thing, and that's what the problem is in the first place. So you're not really improving anything unless you get this top of the guitar properly dehumidified. So, but you know, what we're trying to do is just arrest this a little bit so that Simon has a chance to play this thing for fun. Now, what does it actually say? Chop the end off this. Cut nozzles at the tip, but it says that. And I can't do this very well. So I need my sticky place, my few things, ow, that hurt, a few spiky things. Give you a better view, sorry chap. Now, so I want to make a batch of this, drizzle it onto there, and then persuade it to go under there, and it's this top end here that's the worst, so let's end up here. So I think I have to be on the alert for anything coming through this other side here, because there is a lift right to the edge there, so I've got to spot it coming through, if any does. And then everything else should be alright. Right, there's no lift, or there might be a little lift on that other corner. We'll just cover that off too, just in case. Ta-da! Who knows? Now, I suspect that little shim was under there to give it just enough lift over this dodgy fret up here. So somebody's taken quite some time to try and get that right. So it's quite a positive sign. I presume it's the person who may have fixed this. But however, what they've done, it seems to be the person who's done that has done it while this bridge is in this position. So in a way that's encouraging, because it seems like it must have been there a long time, because you wouldn't have used that, had this bridge risen since that tiny shim was put in place. Taking it away wouldn't have made that tiny bit of difference, or that critical bit of difference that it just did. So I'm kind of suspecting that that's actually quite a positive thing, that the bridge hasn't moved much in all that time, but I could be wrong. Right, this stuff is really not that easy to use. Two of those chopped off. Missed. Okay, you ready for it? Are we ready for it? It's the best I can do. Try it. Go. Woohoo. That should be enough. Cover off the top. Come on, don't mess about. Please don't do it. It's got to be one way or the other. Right. Okay, we're going to mix up as fast as possible. I've used this stuff because it's actually quite runny, pleasingly so. Okay, so now you can't really see this very well, but I'm going to start by lining this up here, and I'm going to ladle a pile of it on to the board right there. Now hopefully I'm going to then try and encourage it to go under, and I'm putting it on the tape right now. I want to encourage it to go underneath the bridge. Now that's going to be quite tricky, whether it even just piles up and forms a sticky wall is probably very likely or possible, but I'm going to have to, there is some backing up onto the actual bridge itself, but I don't really mind that so long as I can get some of it, as much of it as possible, underneath. And for that I'm going to use a blade. I'm going to encourage as much as I can to get down under there. There you go. So like I say, it's going, some of it's going on the bridge, but that's the sort of price we're going to have to pay at this point in time. There's not a lot of gap everywhere else, so just about getting some more down underneath. It's down this end that the bulk of it will hopefully wick underneath the edge of the... Damn, have I got some on my finger here? I think I stupidly have. Damn, damn, damn. Get off there. That's alright. How did that happen? So, sort of, now we're kind of, this direction is the best move. So I'm just trying to, you can see I'm just trying to get it as far under there as I can before it solidifies. And it's got quite a lot of reach. If I had something to blow it under there, it would be great, but I don't. So that's quite good. Now I'm just going to sort of pull it at the top edge if I can, so that any that can still go under there might. And there's a little bit glooped over the top there, which I want to try and clear up in a second. Staying well away, thank you. Okay. Now this is, as I say, this is a slightly temporary measure, and what I'm going to do is, as this starts to dry, I want to probably scoop off as much of the excess as possible, because I don't want a great big, well, I don't want a great big sort of welded lip running all the way down the back of the bridge, so that is a way of taking off what didn't go underneath. Bloop. So I guess, well, actually, you know what? No, it doesn't make sense to slack it off, really, does it? We want as much as possible in there, given the strain that it's going to be under. I think we'll just leave it as is. And then wake up any major surplus as we go. I love my resin. It's very useful stuff. Environmentally hideously unsound, no doubt. See, I think with this it'll have kind of stopped wicking underneath there quite early on. It's quite thick stuff, so if it doesn't go under with the help that I gave it, it's hardly going to go under from this point onwards. So it's either gone under and now it will dry and help to hold this thing in place, or it basically won't. So you can see where, I don't know if you can see it, see where I've softened up some of that sticky tape that was covered over by nitro. Okay, look at that. Well, it's not perfect, but it will give us the best possible chance of. I mean, we're not going to stick it down any further. That's the point. I just want to do my best to try and stop it coming off, so that Simon can at least play it as it currently is, without it, or with for as long as possible before it snaps off, which it will threaten to do anyway. Come on, get in there, get under there, please. Is that under there? Yeah. Okay. Now, any second now, this blade is going to be rendered useless by sticky goo. And I still have plans for this blade. Right. Now what I don't really have is a means of hanging this upside down for a second. But possibly we can. Stay. That will do, and I'm going to take a break at that point. As I say, it is not a repair, right? It is a temporary shoring up of what has to be ideally ripped off and refitted. But we're not going to go down that road, so we'll see if we can just give it that little bit of extra grip that we can't get with wood glue in the back of there. So we can try it with resin and see if it gives us a bit of extra hold. And we'll see how that goes. Let's just try one thing. Thank you. Right, see you in a bit. Okay, well, I just thought I'd sneak in a quick look at, not Morris's backside. No, not his snotty nose again. A quick look. The bridge, whatever that word is, resined into place, hopefully. New pickguard attached, cut out this morning and attached. So far the neck hasn't fallen apart or come away, but it has gone out of tune. We shall see what happens. It could just be destined for the wall. Well, I haven't stretched these. Oh, okay, come on. Well, it's playing, and we didn't spend tons of money on it to make it play. That's the important thing. Not ideal, but playable. Tap in these little pegs to make sure they don't spring right out, because they're trying to. No escape. You're not getting away. It is not going to happen. not getting away, my friend. Well, it's sort of playable. It's better than just being a wall, totally nothing but a wall ornament. Definitely wants to pull out. So basically, that's okay. It plays. Can't really get the action any lower, even though we've got some room here on the saddle to do it, because the frets are so bad in this hump here that if we lowered that any further, we kind of lost some of the notes here on that top E anyway. Yeah, that'll do. There you go. Nice. Back in action. Enjoy.